Hey, what up, guys? Coming to you with another What's Next. This is on the undefeated and former WBA Super Welterweight champion, Brian Castano. Castano is my number 6 Super Welterweight in the world right now. That's 154 pounds. He is currently the WBO's number 1 ranked contender, and he is going to be fighting for the WBO title next. He had the fight with champion Patrick Teixeira lined up. Mandatory title fight was supposed to happen April 25th. It got postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. That fight's still going to go forward in the future. They just got to work out a deal. He'll be going over to DAZN to take on Teixeira, who's with Golden Boy, and fights on DAZN. And I think it's going to be a really good fight. Now, personally, I believe Castano's going to beat him and become the world champion. I do believe it's somewhat close to a 50-50 fight, but I think Castano, based on his performance last year against Lara, I think he's the better fighter than Teixeira. I think he's going to beat him, possibly knock him out, and become a 2-time world champion and a new WBO champion. So, that being said, me predicting he's going to beat Teixeira next, who is very, very likely going to be his next opponent, we're going to discuss what's next for Brian Castano after winning the world title against Patrick Teixeira. So let's run through the top 10 and see. We start with number 1, reigning 2-time WBC champion, Jermell Charlo. Could he face Castano next after Teixeira? This fight's possible. They're both PBC guys. Charlo is leaning towards a unification bout with Erislandy Lara next. If he beats Lara, which I think he'll go in as the favorite, but he's not a lockdown favorite. Lara's definitely a live underdog. Would Charlo face Castano after that? Well, it's kind of up in the air because Charlo is likely going to have a WBC mandatory title fight too. But it's probably going to be against Erickson Lubin, a rematch and a high-risk fight. Charlo has the argument that he knocked out Lubin in the first round of their fight. He doesn't need to fight him again. But, you know, would he want to defend his unified title against Lubin? Or would he be willing to give up the WBC belt and have the WBA regular belt and go after a unification against Castano? I think it's possible. Castano's undefeated. He's a pretty solid fighter. I think there might be some other big fights out there that he might want to look at, but I think a fight here would definitely be possible, so I could see it happen. Number 2 is right now is unified champion Jason Rosario. Now, Jason Rosario holds the WBA Super and the IBF titles. Likely going to make his IBF mandatory next. If he comes through with that one and he's a WBA Super champion, I think Castano and him would be possible. But I really think Rosario would want a bigger name fight, like a rematch with J-Rock Williams or a unification with Charlo, if Charlo's still champion, which, you know, I predict that he would be. So I don't think Rosario would want to go after Castano over like a Charlo or a bigger name. So I think it's possible because they both are with PBC, but I think less likely because Rosario probably wants to go after a bigger name. Next at number 3 is J-Rock Williams. Now, I mean, I wouldn't completely rule it out again because it is PBC guys going at it, but would J-Rock want to come back and face off against an undefeated champion in Castano, or if he had an opportunity against one of the other guys? Or he just tries to stay busy to get one of the bigger names in the ring? To me, that's what seems more likely for J-Rock, but I wouldn't completely rule it out because Castano would be the undefeated champion, and J-Rock probably get an interim fight in between, and then he would be ready for a title shot after that. So I could see it. Number 4 is a showdown with Jarrett Hurd. This fight, I think, could very likely happen. And the reason why is nobody wants to face Jarrett Hurd. He doesn't have the titles anymore, and he's dangerous. And I think most people know that. So even after this whole thing happens, like everybody gets a fight in, next is a guy like Castano. Is he going to be wanted by a lot of the other fighters? Not really, because a lot of the other fighters are probably bigger names and want to face each other. So Jarrett Hurd's going to be sitting there, and I think it's very possible Castano and Hurd get together for a title fight next. So definitely think that could happen. Number 5 would be a rematch with WBA regular champion Erislandy Lara. Well, If Lara were to upset Jermell Charlo, if those two guys do lock up, and he were to upset Charlo to unify belts, and a rematch wasn't due between the two, then I could see him facing Castano. But to be honest, I think he stays away from it. And the reason why is he could probably get the Rosario fight. And he already holds the WBA regular belt. Rosario's a WBA unified champ. He's a super champ. And he would have the IBF belt. It would just make more sense for Lara to go after a Rosario fight. So I think he'd stay away from Castano. Castano's number 6. Number 7 is Patrick Teixeira. They're fighting. If the first fight is good enough and very close, I think a rematch is possible, but I think Teixeira would have to have a rematch clause in the contract. Not sure that's going to be the case. Probably, I'm leaning towards less likely because I don't think a rematch clause would be the case. But if there was a robbery for some reason and the WBO mandated it, then it mandated the rematch, then I could see these two guys locking horns a second time. Number 8 is, Teixeira was number 8. Number 7 is former WBC champion Tony Harrison. Definitely a possibility if Castano's champ and nobody else wants to sign up and face Harrison. I think definitely we could see Harrison face off against Castano. Former champ, both with the PBC, definitely could be an option. Now number 9 is former world title challenger Terrell Gausha. Not seeing this one, even if Castano comes off the win over Teixeira, unless he absolutely had to take this fight. But I really think it would have to be somewhat mandated or a desperate opponent because he can't get anything else going on. Because Gausha is just not a highly regarded name, somewhat of a risk. But again, I wouldn't completely rule it out because I don't think Castano would be afraid to take it. And then finally at number 10 is former world title challenger Erickson Lubin. I think the fight could happen, but and I think Lubin would be down for the fight. I wouldn't completely rule out Castano being down for the fight because Castano, if he doesn't get anybody else with bigger names, he could be getting avoided. Excuse me. Lubin could move up to become the WBC champion because Charlo decides to go do something else instead of making a mandatory against him. So from that regards, I think the fight could happen. But I'm leaning towards the less likely, but it definitely is possible because they're both with PBC. So what do I think Castano's going to do next after beating Patrick Teixeira? To be honest, I have no fucking clue, but here's the thing. He's going to have options because he's PBC guy, and 9 of the 10 fighters at 154 that are ranked in the top 10 are PBC guys. So somebody's going to have to fight him. He'll have a world title. Somebody's going to have to want to get in the ring with him, and somebody will. So I definitely think he'll have the options. It will be a big fight no matter what, and I'm hoping his fight with Patrick Teixeira is a good one. So look forward to Brian Castano versus Patrick Teixeira next. That's a What's Next on Undefeated. Brian Castano, my number 6 super welterweight in the world. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.